So the fast food philosophy that I see a lot, right, is about this. Quickly delivering messages. And when situations are difficult, when things go bad, what do people tend to do? They tend to assign blame. Or they tend to prove they're right about the content. And that gets people defensive, like we just discussed. So what we do is basically a few things. We assume we're right. You have a difficult situation. The report, you always have that colleague that just doesn't send that report on time. Or is never quite able to stand within the deadlines. And this is happening repeatedly. And you're all of a sudden fed up, and you have this observation that, I asked you once, I asked you twice, you still get late. I'm angry now, and I'm going to deliver this message. Right? Stop doing that. You're to blame because you're not delivering on time, and I'm right about this, so you need to be sanctioned one way or another. I don't know. So this is what we do. We assume the truth. We assume we're right. And this is natural. It's built in. It has to do with how the brain works. Maybe for another in session. Yeah. But we assume we're right. And think about your personal lives, because that's where we do it the most. And of course, in our professional lives as well. We invent intentions. If somebody does something that somehow disagrees at a profound level with our way of thinking, we assume his intentions are bad and that our intentions are right. And he's just this evil person sent by a cosmic entity to do us harm. We assume their intentions are bad. Right? So we do this a lot. Of course he does this because he has something against me. You see? That's a very common assumption, right? Of intention, sorry. The third thing, like I just said, we're very much interested in the blame factor, right? Blaming. But blaming is as useful as talking about politics at a family dinner. Right? It's as useful as that. Blaming gets you nowhere. Because let's imagine a scenario where you actually find a person who accepts to be blamed, right? And they take the fall, and you say, cool, what do you say? Like John said, I showed him who's the boss. I proved I'm right. He took the blame. We're safe. My question is, how close are you to the cause of the problem? Assigning blame leaves dysfunctional processes in place. Well and thriving. Finding somebody to blame is the fastest way to cover a bad process. If you go back to John and Mary, the cause that led to her misplacing the PowerPoint thing was his typical rejection behavior when he was busy. That was the cause. It's not about blaming, it's not about being right. And let's say, Mary took the blame. John was right, no problem. Do you think she would have ever misplaced the USB again? Probably not. Right? Because it's an impactful situation. But what other problems do you think John's dismissive behavior would cause in the future? Probably a lot more diverse. So you see how blame gets you nowhere? Anyway, nowhere near the cause that is causing the difficult situations. Blame is useless. Essentially, it is useless. So this is what we do in difficult conversations, and what we should be doing more. Instead of trying to be right, which is the same thing as blaming in terms of usefulness, we should be more curious. And this is getting me back to what I said in the beginning. How do you move from a message delivery conversation to a learning conversation. The key is being curious. The curiosity is about questions. It's about asking questions. What message am I going to say? What do I want to transmit to the person? Why do I want to transmit this? Why is it important? How will they react? Why do I believe that? Why do I believe they will react in one way or another? What can I do about it? How could they see this exact thing in a different way? And be perfectly valid? What am I going to do if they have a valid point and mine is valid but different? How does that make me feel? So you see how curiosity opens up my mind to scenarios before I even get into the conversation.
But it's hard work actually.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's not easy conversations. It's difficult conversations. And often I see this mistake. So actually two mistakes. One, thinking that it can be solved in one single conversation. So okay, let's book half an hour, let's talk about this and just get it done. You see? That doesn't work like that. Usually it takes several conversations. It depends. And the second mistake is people don't plan. People don't plan. It's obvious that you should prepare for that conversation. It's not just something you talk about like this over coffee. Why don't you do the same why don't we do the same at work? When we think about low performance, why is something happening over and over? Why does somebody keep coming up late for meetings? Why does somebody has a decrease in their performance all of a sudden when they were used to be a rock star? Why don't people, just have the same level of performance in the new role like they had in the previous role? This is not easy stuff. You don't just talk about this in 5 minutes. And you need to plan for it. So we should be curious, we should check our perceptions, because everybody has good intentions. I've rarely met somebody that has bad and evil intentions. They exist, but I've never met them actually. It's about the lens through which I see the world. Is it a small lens or is it a big, wide lens? So check your perception has to do with what is the lens that you're looking through.
What are your filters actually?
Yeah, exactly. What are your filters? How do you perceive things? Are you being biased? Maybe you're exaggerating. Are you sure you got it right? Like in your interpretations of the data, of the content. So always check your perceptions instead of inventing bad intentions. And the third thing, and this is if you want, the replacement of blaming is mapping the contributions. Instead of trying to blame somebody, try to map the contribution system. How and who has contributed to this situation? Are they present in the conversation if they are more than us talking? How have I contributed? How have you contributed? How has X, Y, Z? I don't know. It's not about who's to blame, it's about who contributed and how they contributed. It's just as easy as doing a mind map. You draw a piece of paper and you put the problem in the middle of it and you start drawing the different contributions that you think existed. And then the other person can do the same. And you leave that conversation with a sheet of paper of possible contributions to the problem. Now compare that to, I'm right and you're wrong, and you're to blame. You see how blaming gets you nowhere. So if we're going to get stuck in content, make sure you're talking about contributions, not blame. Make sure you check your perception before imagining evil intentions. And stay curious, like somebody said. Can't remember who.